So it's a little bit about what the end customer wants, and one is more expensive than the other one, but we can delve into that topic a little bit further. I work for a string inverter manufacturer, full disclosure, so I'm kind of biased. I prefer string inverters over microinverters. Yeah, so welcome to the end of September. You know, we've gotten here to this point of September 28th. It's finally cooling down here in the city of Austin, and it's nice. It's ACL weekend #1, so we're gonna have tons of good music this week and next week too. But today we're also gonna speak more about energy storage. We're gonna be unpacking a little bit about energy storage, what it is, helping you understand it. And we've invited a series of women leaders. You know, I think that it's really important to hear about these pioneers that have made it so far, to help us understand what is going on in their worlds and how this ties into, you know, our need to modernize, digitize the grid. So let's hop into first some announcements here. And if anyone has any sort of questions, feel free to pop in the chat. To introduce myself, my name is Juan Afanador. I'm one of the board members for Solar Austin, and along with Tatiana, we help plan these events as well as our team. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our sponsors. So our stellar sponsor, that's our highest level, is FTC Solar. They are a racking manufacturer and recently went public, actually, based out of Austin. And we also have Ørsted and Mayfield Renewables. Ørsted is a developer, and so we're gonna have Kate that joins us today. She's gonna be speaking from Ørsted. Mayfield Renewables is a design firm. Freedom Solar Power is the biggest solar installer in Austin, and Yada Energy is an inverter and storage manufacturer that's based here in Austin too. And of course, Downtown Alliance keeps our downtown streets clean. All those are megawatt sponsors, and now are kilowatts. So we have HEB, which we all know. There is CED Green Tech, a distributor. Lighthouse Solar, an installer based out of Austin. Z Prime, a media company that focuses on clean energy production. Hush and Blackwell, a law firm. Pipermatics, a recruiting agency. If you're trying to get into the sector, they can help you out. They Might Be Monkeys, which helps make sure that the trees are well kept. And then SunPro, which is a solar installation company. And then our watt sponsors, we have Greenbelt Solar, a local installer. Clean Power Marketing, a local marketing agency that works across the industry. The Deeren Group, Greener by Design, and Harris Energy Solutions, as well as Greenhawk Business. And they offer different sort of energy and accounting consultings. So I know that Katie is new and they haven't been to these happy hours before. I wonder how many of the other participants we have today are newcomers to our happy hours. I'm curious if you want to raise your hand virtually or something, and just to see a show of little hands. But in the meantime, I'll share with you the story of who we are. We are an organization, a nonprofit 501c3 that was funded or founded almost 20 years ago. So we are a chapter of the Texas Solar Energy Society, which is a subsection of the Solar Energy, the SEIA, the Solar Energy Group. So together, our mission is to help educate Central Texas, such as yourselves, and help advance the adoption of solar energy across our regions. So if you definitely want to hear more about us and find out ways to volunteer, and I'll explain different things that we have going on, feel free to drop us a note at info@solaraustin.com or check us out on social media. Our organization is split in 5 different committees. So we have the Policy Advocacy Committee, in which we're constantly speaking with utility companies, with lawmakers, and policy advocates as to how we can break down those barriers that stand in the way of us adopting more solar. Then there's Events and Outreach, which is led by myself, and that is how we are communicating with the general public through these monthly happy hours and other sort of events. Solar Education speaks a little bit more to our schools and our I guess there's also like summer camps and our younger generations, and helps them kind of understand what solar is about and how it makes complete sense to get energy from the sun. The Pathways program is our flagship program, which I'll speak more in a few minutes. And then there's community installations, in which we are donating resources, panels, inverters, racking, to different nonprofits or different buildings in the city, and creating these energy resiliency centers. So a little bit more to come on that as well. This is our team. We are all a volunteer team except for Tatiana, who is our executive director. She just joined our team about a few months ago as our only paid member. Everybody else is volunteer, representing different sides of the industry, right? From the utility engineers to the community advocates to the law to the research to the policy. So I think that we are able to have a different source of perspectives, and we're always looking at more perspectives. So if you'd like to be part of our team, just drop us a note and see what it is that you think you can contribute with. We're always looking to expand. This is a little bit more about our Pathways to Clean Energies, which became our flagship program a couple of years ago. It was created by a grant from the city of Austin, in which it allowed us to partner up with universities, specifically Huston-Tillotson University, historically Black college, and local solar companies, as to how we can increase the diversity in our solar industry. So what we did is that we talked to students at Huston-Tillotson that said, hey, yeah, I want to work in solar. And we talked to local companies saying, hey, yeah, I need some help. And then together we were able to create these pathways of careers for these underrepresented students to get into our sector. I don't know if you know, but it's relatively difficult, even though there's a lot of jobs, to find that dream job that we all want. So we've been able to expand this pretty successfully because there's a lot of interest from both companies to fill it with passionate, qualified people, as well as from students that want to do something. So I think right now we're entering our 4th cohort, pretty successful, and we're continuing to expand it not only in Austin, but also across the states, across Texas and across the United States. And these are a little bit of what's going on with Pathways is that October 8th, if you are part of a company that you know will want to host an intern, we are going to be having that deadline for the company to submit an application, right? And to kind of be part of these of the training orientation workshop so that we can then start recruiting for January 2022. Then we'll work on this matching exercise so that we can help you and help the company and the student find the best match. We'll take care of the interviewing prep and help support finding, the best fit. I'll let Tatiana speak a little bit more about this, and she's helping steer this and lead it forward, and maybe you can help out too.
Yeah, so Juan, thanks for giving us the overview. And I know that some of you on this happy hour have been able to host Pathways interns or be a Pathways intern yourself. So welcome back. We're so glad to see you and keep you in our Solar Austin fold. We are really excited because this fall, we made a really tough choice to pause our internships so that we could make our spring semester that much bigger and better. As Juan shared, we're entering our 4th semester. And in that much time, which for those keeping up, maybe you're a little out of the scholastic age, is barely a year and a half, the program has grown exponentially. And we've seen so much interest from our potential interns as well as partner companies. So we actually extended our deadline. This is a new deadline, October 8th. We've had a lot of interested companies with many different positions, and it doesn't have to be just engineering positions. Think marketing, communications, business development, supply chain, whatever you can think of. This is just an opportunity for us to do what the program says, provide those pathways. And I know, like I said, we've got some Pathways interns and participants on the phone. So feel free to chat in if you want to give a woohoo because you're here. But we really want to do right by this program. And that's specifically what we're focusing on for the next few months. So we know it's kind of hard to think about what you'll be doing in January of 2022 when it's only almost October of 2021. But we really want to reinforce just the value of this program and the opportunity that it provides and the increased capacity of your workforce. These interns are a step above. So if you're able to, we would love you to participate. I will chat in here once I'm done rambling, how you can get more info from our website. So we hope you can participate and meet some of our great interns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of need for qualified people in the industry from all different types of angles, and there's a lot of passionate individuals. So we want to do what's possible, not only to match that, but to help the minorities gain a little bit more representation in our mostly male, mostly white industry. And so speaking a little bit more about these pathways and these opportunities of learning, today I think that we want to help you guys learn a little bit more about these women leaders that have achieved great successes when it comes to working with storage, when it comes to working with utility plants, and to help us understand like what it is that utility storage and solar plus storage looks like. So today we're going to be joined by Kate Goldsberry, who is she works for Ørsted. She's an asset manager, and Ørsted is one of our sponsors. Also, Fluence, not a sponsor yet, but at the same time, we do have one of our board members that works for Fluence, and so Jillian will be joining us from the West Coast. She's the senior manager, helps develop the projects, the projects and the products, working a little bit on the engineering and the customer service side of things as well. And definitely on the customer service and sales is Allegra, who works for STEM. So I'll give a little bit of a summary about these companies, but want to know if maybe if you can pop in the chat, just understand the familiarity of where we are as a crowd, right? Who has heard of these companies before? Who understands solar plus storage, and how much context should we give to make sure that you guys understand the most? So feel free to drop a note saying I know nothing or I know a lot.
Put that in the chat.
Yeah, you can put it on the chat, or you can also unmute yourself too if you have any sort of thoughts.
Well, I have no idea what Ørsted does.
Okay.
That gives you a data point. In fact, I don't know what any of these companies do now that I think about it.
That's good. Then we can start kind of with.
But I like the persona that's being projected in the pictures.
Great. Well, maybe we can start then with Ørsted since she's first, kind of on the presentation. I'll give a quick rundown and say that Ørsted is a Danish company. They're the world's leading energy project developer, right? So they were established in Denmark in 2006, and they become Denmark's largest power producer. Then they're divided kind of between onshore, right, energy projects and offshore. When we talk about onshore, they currently operate 1.7 gigawatts of solar, and that's of energies, and that's a combination of wind and solar. They have the largest wind project in the U.S., and it's actually here in Texas near Wichita Falls, and that's 367 megawatts. And they also have the largest solar project in Texas, which is 460 megawatts in the Permian Basin. So this project, though, the Permian Energy Center is what it's called, is the largest solar plus storage project in the state. And these 460 megawatts is enough to power about 80,000 homes. So that's kind of helping put it into scale. We need a lot more of these big projects. And Kate is the woman that is helping manage this asset. Overall, though, Ørsted aims to continue developing both the onshore wind and solar projects and also the offshore renewable energy projects, while investing in the local communities with the well-paying jobs, the partnership, and the community reinvestment that helps it be a closer collaboration with the communities and accomplish their goal of being net zero by 2025 and without carbon emissions by 2040. So they're a monster that is creating good things across the state and across the United States. As a reminder, they are Danish and the largest energy project developer. So I hope that helped, Bruce. Now you learn a little bit more about one of our sponsors.
Yeah, no, that definitely helped.
And I think that maybe we can move on next to, I forgot who was next. I think it was Jillian. And so Jillian is part of Fluence. Fluence, actually, today they announced their IPO. I believe that became news, so congratulations. That's a big step for us because Fluence is a company that is a venture of Siemens and AES, and they are the market leader when it comes to energy storage products and services, while adding on the digital applications of renewables and storage. It can be a lot, but they operate more than 3 gigawatts of energy storage across 29 different markets globally. And this operation is either they've deployed it or they've contracted to operate it. And they have more than 4 gigawatts of wind and solar and storage assets optimized in Australia and in California, kind of the key markets over there. So together they offer the hardware of different battery storage combinations and also the artificial intelligence that helps everything just kind of be synchronized together, called the Fluence IQ platform. So what this is that it helps customers around the world just have a more resilient grid for a more sustainable future. It's not just the hardware component, but it's also how this is responding to the needs of the environment and the customers, so the demand. In a similar sense, we have Allegra from STEM. So STEM is also a public company, and they provide the service called like energy storage as a service. So using also an AI platform called Athena, they manage the utility scale and the commercial energy storage, load and demand. So they partner with different hardware technologies, so different batteries, to build, monitor, and then optimize the system over time. And that way they can flow really seamlessly to either deploy or drop back the energy storage that is needed based on the demand of the grid. They are the first public pure play energy storage provider, and they currently operate more than 1 gigawatt hours of projects both behind the meter and in front of the meter throughout the world. So it's a privilege, honestly, to be speaking with these 3 ladies today, and for them to take the time to join us, because I think their perspectives are kind of what is going on around the world, but most importantly, like how it's also affecting us here in Texas. You know, we have a very unique grid profile, and to help us kind of like just remove the veil of the mystery of why storage is just as essential as solar. So without further ado, I think that we can showcase. I want to see if Allegra has joined, but I see Kate and Jillian are on the screen.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kate, if you want to kick us off, I would say if everybody wants to do a quick self intro and any gaps that one may be missed in that quick profile, feel free to share.
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me?
Perfectly.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So my name is Kate Goldsberry. Just quick background on me. I actually attended school in Texas as an undergrad. I went to Trinity University in San Antonio. So living now in Austin, a close sister city, and very excited to be back in the area. Have been in Texas pretty much my whole professional career. So just a quick aside on the Texas things. I will say my traditional path of getting here has been a little bit odd. So I actually have a degree in English literature, which is not very common for someone in my background. A lot of my background peers have finance degrees or some sort of management degree. So just FYI, my background is a little bit non-traditional, but that's, I think, led me to be a little bit different thinking in terms of how I approach asset management. Other things about me, I guess my background, I was potentially going to become a librarian, and that's a little bit how I transitioned into this industry. So my mom is actually a librarian, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to go back and get my MLS or my Master's of Library of Science, and had a friend on the side that said, hey, I think you would be perfect for this job. And that job was a records team manager / coordinator, to read through a bunch of different contracts on the renewable energy side. So I actually kind of got a really broad view as my first take in the industry of reading lots of contracts and lots of project output, studies, reports, all of that good stuff. And that kind of gave me a good feel for the industry and how I kind of got my start. So I used to call myself a contract librarian, but that's how I kind of came to be in the industry. So that's my brief, probably too long overview for you.
No, I think it's cool because that's a little bit of what we're here. There's so many youth, young people here that want to know, you know, maybe I didn't study engineering, I want to get in the solar industry, but look, you can study English and still make it through, or study literature and still make it through. That's pretty amazing. So was your work at Fluence the first renewable energy job that you had?
Was that for Jillian?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, I blanked over there. Your work at Ørsted, the first renewable energy company you had?
No, so I actually worked previously at a company called EDP Renewables, which is based out of the Houston area. They are also an owner, operator, developer of renewable energy. So very similar role that I had at that company, and a couple different jumping off points to get me from my contractual librarian position to my asset management position on the operations side.
Okay,
So have worked for Ørsted a little over a year now.
right. That helps us kind of understand your path over here, and I think that maybe we can hear the same from Jillian. You know, it's like a little bit about what it is that you studied, and how did you end up, you know, now working for Fluence?
Sure. I will also say we at Fluence do not own any assets. Just want to clarify that. But so I started, actually, my interest in sustainability started at a very young age, even so far back as kindergarten, where in class we would participate in an activity called Beautiful Junk. So we would all bring like recycling into class, and, you know, turn tissue boxes or paper, or toilet paper rolls or things like that into, you know, useful things for a kindergartner. My parents didn't really like it when I started ruffling through their recycling all the time, but I think they're okay with it now. So, you know, years later, I applied actually into architecture programs. I was really interested in architecture at the time, or thought that I was, and ended up at Syracuse University in upstate New York. And after about one semester there, I was like, you know, this really isn't for me. I think I need something a little bit more technical, you know, and so, you know, not, you know, saying anything against architects, it's just the architecture programs at different schools are very different. And the one at Syracuse is a little bit more art based. And so I picked mechanical engineering to transfer into kind of at random, having enjoyed a MATLAB class, you know, having known that probably is like not really related to mechanical engineering, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. But I stuck with mechanical engineering and, you know, debated transferring universities altogether, but ended up getting a really awesome internship experience, or it was actually like a full-time, felt full-time, kind of opportunity with the Industrial Assessment Center at Syracuse University. And so the Industrial Assessment Center is a program run by the Department of Energy that's at a couple dozen schools across the country, where the students are really being trained as energy engineers with experience in small and medium manufacturing facility energy assessments. So I did that through, you know, undergrad, all of undergrad, well, except like freshman year, and then through grad school, and got my MS in engineering management, also from Syracuse. And then from there, I, you know, kind of wanting to change the world, I applied to Siemens Energy, to their engineering development program, thinking, you know, like, I'm going to go to this huge company, I'm going to change the world. You know, and being at a big company, it's you know, it's a big company culture, but it was really exciting nonetheless. So I did 3 different rotations, kind of starting off 2 in manufacturing, 1 in project engineering, and then took a full-time role in generator service engineering, which was not super exciting for me. And so I ended up at Fluence about 3 years ago, and here I am now. You know, I've done a few roles now here at Fluence over the past couple of years, and then currently I'm in product management. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. From architecture, understanding like the built environment, you know, well, actually from building things out of toilet paper rolls, you know, I'm glad that now you're still building things, you know, except with energy storage in mind, and you're kind of like changing the world one.
Yeah, not out of cardboard anymore.
Yeah, pretty amazing, you know, and it's cool. So remind us, what is it that you got your master's in that helped you kind of get this role
Yeah, so I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering and my master's in engineering management. I took like a much more business approach to engineering management degree than than a lot of people did. Like you could kind of take it more technical or take it more business. So I took a lot of like managing sustainability classes and like more sustainability focused classes instead of like really going deep and like advanced like fluid mechanics and things like that, because I was like, this isn't for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's awesome because it kind of helps us like understand where it is that you are now. I think Allegra just joined us as well, and so now I want to ask you too, is like help us understand a little bit about your education, your professional journey, of course, and maybe introduce yourself to the group if you want. Kind of give the rundown of the company.
Great. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on this panel. Really excited to participate and definitely love that you guys are putting on this event. And to introduce myself, I'm Allegra Donadio. I work at STEM on the business development team, as you can see. And to go a little bit into my background, I went to Boston College and was a math major and environmental studies minor. At the time, they didn't have an environmental major, or definitely would have pursued that double major. But I would say I really got excited and inspired for renewable energy and joining and having a career in this industry through my study abroad program in Denmark, where it was the first time that I really was exposed to the fact that renewables are here and now and the present, and this is not a future that we're moving into, it's an impact that we can make today. And so that really got me inspired, and I had excellent professors at BC that really kept me engaged. And when I got back to the States, I had an internship with Environment Massachusetts, where I worked on their advocacy team, and we were pushing for a solar campaign at the time. And it was really powerful to be a part of an organization that is trying to move the needle on the ground level and has that grassroots influence. But it is a challenging job, and I think I was ready to do something a little different once I got more into the professional space. And I actually ended up meeting Juan, and we were colleagues together at Civic Solar. So I started off on the solar side of things, and after working for Civic Solar for 5 years in various different hats, I loved working for a small company, and I definitely loved Civic Solar and the culture that went along with it. So we really got to enjoy that experience and dive into different parts of the solar industry together. And after 5 years, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that renewables rabbit hole, and that's how I found myself at STEM.
Cool. Yeah, and a shout out here to Emmett, who was also part of Civic Solar. So we used to work together, full disclosure, and Civic Solar is a distributor, so we were connecting the upstream manufacturers with the downstream installers and providing them the parts and pieces and the support for that. So pretty cool that you also started a little bit with the environmental aspect and the grassroots organizing, so now we have a little bit of the literature and librarian, we have a little bit of the engineering, and then we have a little bit of the social aspect of the grassroots as the main origins. I think that it's a little bit helpful to help piece all this together and see where it is that your guys' current roles and current companies stand when we look at this figure here, which is just the energy storage value chain. So it can be a little bit complicated for somebody that isn't used to looking at this, but this is kind of a little bit of the complexities of the utility scale solar plus storage, and each of these companies fit into this wheel in different times. So I think that I want to hear from you as to where you feel your company fits in here, as well as who you're constantly speaking to in your day-to-day, work, whether they're the internal teams or like the external stakeholders they need to make sure they're happy with the company. I'll keep the same order. So Kate, I'll let you go first and explain a little bit about Ørsted, and then I'll let Jillian and then Allegra help us understand where you fit into this wheel and what you do on your day-to-day.
Sure. So I would say from my perspective, I actually work on the operations side. So majority of when we pick up a site is after the construction is finished or about when the construction is wrapping up. And then we see the operation of the facility. So a lot of it is coordination with our service providers, long-term service providers or short-term vendors, to make sure that our maintenance is ongoing and that our asset is a reliable and well-producing one. So that's pretty much where I pick up on the asset management side of the fence. I would say the majority of what I do on a daily basis is kind of ad hoc a little bit, but mostly focusing on, you know, the operational budgeting piece, availability, which is about production, and if the sun is on, that the actual panels are producing. So that's, again, not an engineering explanation, but that's the general gist of what I'm doing when I'm talking about availability. And then also compliance efforts. So anything on the commercial or regulatory side, making sure that we're staying in compliance with all of the different utility standards. So that's most of where I would say Ørsted fits into this from what I do. We also develop, as one mentioned in the beginning of this. So I would say we kind of have a longer life cycle than what I typically see on my day-to-day. And that is also including, you know, a lot of the mapping elements, making sure that the layout and the design of the facilities make sense, and then how the storage component is going to be fit into the actual project itself. So as Wanda mentioned earlier, we have right now one storage facility that's also combined with solar, and it's in the Permian Basin. It's a pretty large project, and so that took a long time to get to our team, and many years of hard work. So that is kind of the overall gist. We kind of hit a lot of these different sides. I'm not sure if I'm going to point them out specifically, but from the development, the beginning of actually acquiring land and talking to landowners through actual operation and installation of the facility, we kind of cover all of it.
Well, I think, Kate, you guys are pretty much at the core of things, right? You guys are at the heart, because it's kind of like the pre-development, finding out the right land and finding out, you know, who are the right type of customers that will benefit from this. And afterwards, it's like, okay, how can we keep up our promises for the 25 plus years that the plant will be operating? How long do you think it takes to kind of set the wheels in motion and make sure, like, as an example, the Permian Basin, you know, is it 2 years, is it 5 years, is it 10 years of work that goes in of the designing and the land acquisition to then get to the point of like, hey, congratulations, we've interconnected to the grid?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's pretty project dependent. Definitely had a project that I've seen in the past that was over 15 years of development, working with multiple landowners, as well as another one that was in development for 10 years, working with a single landowner. It really just depends on the project and what the layout is. So a lot of what we've seen on the solar side, it's a smaller footprint when you talk about acreage overall. It might be more concentrated on the solar side. So most of my background is on the wind side, which will have a turbine with leases. But I would say overall, it's been really interesting to see these projects come to fruition. And I always love hearing our developers talk about them, because I know eventually I'll get them. I just don't know at what point. So I would say it's hard to pin down like a exact timeline. It's about permits and the utility access, as well as the offtake structure, and what makes the project viable. So there's a lot of different elements that go into the project and trying to make sure that it gets off the ground. And I'm very thankful to the developers that actually have to do all the legwork and the hard work to get it to the place that I see it at.
Mm-hmm. And then who do you tend to be speaking to the most? Is it internal people like O&M managers, or is it external?
Yeah, it's kind of that's a great question. It's a good mix, which is why I love my job. So we do have a really good internal asset management team. We have operational engineers that we work with, as well as analytics and performance driving teams that basically focus on specific metrics and making sure that they're tracking downtime efficiencies, fault code details, and making sure that they're trying to minimize any downtime. There's always retrofits in this industry, so trying to boost your production is a big and important piece that we're starting to see more in the solar space in terms of the tracking mechanisms. So it's really a good mix of internal and external. I work with tax equity partners, we do reporting, off-takers. It really just depends on the day.
Wow, that's exciting. And it seems like there's a lot of unpredictability maybe that can happen, right? As to like how you can make sure you stay with the broader plan, but also how do you adapt to like the needs of the plant?
Very much so.
Cool. And I saw kind of Jillian kind of like nodding her head when Kate mentioned retrofits. Is that something you do a lot, or is it just kind of like what exactly are you most involved with at Fluence, and who do you tend to speak to on the day to day?
Yeah, well, so to speak to the retrofits piece a little bit, I mean, we're not doing this yet, but obviously augmentation is something that is going to be a big factor in a lot of battery energy storage systems. And so that augmentation has been like a pet project of mine at Fluence for some time. So I'm happy to chat about that. But so kind of like looking at this little wheel here. So Fluence and storage in general really can provide basically anything on this spectrum. So Fluence is really focused on the top right, so the ISO RTO services, and also the bottom utility services. We do have a CNI product that can do things, in the customer service bucket, like demand charge reduction or backup power. But largely what I'm focusing on are products that really can do anything kind of here in these, the 2/3 on the bottom and top right here. And so, being a product manager, or I guess I read somewhere once, as a product manager, you have all of the responsibility and none of the power. And so that always makes me laugh, kind of thinking about that, and, thinking about all the people that I work with daily, internal and external. So I work with, with and not directly on my team, but like a lot of other product managers, program managers, engineers, and kind of the functional component leads for other pieces of our products. Also sales and kind of our market applications team, which is really kind of external facing, getting a lot of input from the market and where the market's going, how it's growing, things like that. And then externally, we really are focusing, or externally, I talk, often with suppliers, with like equipment suppliers that kind of go into our product. So really everyone. So, often on the phone with, senior leadership, the executives, the whole gambit, I guess, in product management.
Cool.
Keeps it exciting.
You're the brains and you're the guru that everybody wants to talk to about, when they're trying to qualify whether or not this is a good fit or not, right?
Exactly.
Is it pretty easy to satisfy the needs of the market these days, based on product and availability and just kind of like, here are the expectations, I want backup power for X number of hours, and like this is how much you can provide, or what's
it's really interesting. I mean, and it's different everywhere across the globe, right? So I have the most experience like working on kind of big projects in California, but as I've expanded my role into like a global function, you really do get to see the needs of the markets in all the different regions. And so, I think there's obviously like a lot of really great players in the market right now, each kind of bringing its own value proposition or things like that, and I think, I think we're continuing to kind of solve new problems, add and create value in kind of new ways, to keep it a competitive marketplace for storage.
Yeah, and I think in a similar boat is Allegra and STEM. So I want to hear the same. I want to ask the same question and hear your response, kind of where STEM fits in here, as well as who you tend to speak to a little bit more in the business development side of things. I feel like there's a lot of business to develop. So.
Sure. Definitely a lot of business to develop. I'll start first just addressing the wheel. And so STEM provides 11 of the 13 services. We don't do voltage support and black start, but every other customer revenue stream, we can provide that value. And I would say we really, our roots in where we had specialized initially was in the behind the meter space with the customer services. And so demand charge management is typically the number one value stream that we're optimizing for C&I customers. But I would then, what is really great about STEM and what I think is really interesting is how we can aggregate those resources together for virtual power plants that then can provide the utility or ISO values. So it is a really neat thing about the storage industry, how everything kind of compounds and builds for that distributed energy resource value. And then obviously we can also provide front of the meter solutions that can participate in wholesale markets and provide the real-time or day-ahead market support or ancillary services support. So definitely involved in many capacities, and everyone kind of starts hearing about energy storage as far as backup power. But I think what's really interesting about it, as I've gotten the opportunity to learn more, is just the actual monetary value that it can provide. And it's providing that value because it's offsetting carbon emissions. So it's great to just continue to learn. And that's definitely why I love my role in business development, is that every day I get to learn something new, and I get to learn it from such a broad swath of stakeholders. So I'll be speaking with utilities, with our developer EPC partners, market consultants, our technology providers. Really every day is different. And so that's something that makes my job interesting and helps me feel valuable, is that I'm able to synthesize all of these different inputs and help guide my company and help our company guide the industry.
Oh, that's well said. You know, I think that it's really tough being in this age of like, how do we prepare for the worst? You know, and how do we make sure that we are also being efficient and save without, you know, kind of paying too much in the beginning of it. And I think that's a little bit of what's cool about the solutions that STEM Influence have to offer, right? Because we're using artificial intelligence, we're using modeling, and we're using kind of predictive analysis to find out, you know, what could go wrong and how do we sell that and make sure that when things go wrong, that they don't go as bad as what we went through in February here, right? In which like there's deaths that and lives at stake. So that's definitely kind of worth considering as the climate gets warmer and as our situations become a lot more unpredictable. You know, the essential role of AI and also the hardware of storage. I also want to open it up to anyone to drop off a question, you know, in the chat box, you know, whether you want clarification, what's behind the meter, front of the meter, what's ISO. There could be a lot of terms that get tossed around, and I've dabbled a little bit in utility, but not as much as these experts here. So we're here to help you guys understand about storage and how essential it is to considering renewable deployment.
So what is behind the meter and in front of the meter?
I can let Allegra answer that since she
Sure.
was talking about it last.
Yep. So behind the meter is any resource that is customer sided. So whether that's residential or commercial and industrial, that's going to be a behind the meter resource, versus front of the meter. It's on the other side of the meter. And so that's usually where you're seeing more of the utility scale value. So it is so the front of the meter is usually the larger systems. Behind the meter can be larger, but can also often be the smaller ones. And when we're aggregating the behind the meter resources for the virtual power plants, that's still providing a similar value as the front of the meter, but with the ability to stack additional revenue streams, since we can take advantage of the customer load and provide value to them in addition to the utility. Is that helpful?
Yes.
It's a little simple.
Yeah, I mean, I was clueless before.
Sure. And I think the challenge with energy storage is it's so easy to make it complicated. So I like to try and figure out how I can come up with the crispest answers. So feel free to ask for clarifying questions at any point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's of course it can be complicated, but it's also like, how do we continue to adapt to a more decentralized type of way of handling everybody's energy loads and profiles, you know, which is a little bit of the challenge of what we're faced with right now. It's like, to put it in perspective, we were, what the grid was designed in a way so that like we had few sources of energy production, right? Few power plants. And now we have like more solar plants and wind plants, and now we have distributed generation coming as well. How can we balance out that input of energy and this demand that we're increasing and use storage as a tool to make sure everything is seamless? I think there's a little bit of there's a question from Carrie here that maybe we can leave at the end. So we can address like these bigger questions about like future projections at the end. But I think it would be nice to hear a little bit about kind of the scenario of how a customer such as Orsted would go about selecting these options and when it makes sense to speak about storage from a project development side. I don't know if we're considering that all the solar projects or all the wind projects need storage, or maybe some, or maybe it's retrofits afterwards. So we can start perhaps like with Kate, coming from more so the developer, to help us understand that, and afterwards we can see how one would go about selecting the hardware, as Jillian's case, and one would be about satisfying the needs of utility with STEM.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, again, I'm going to hedge back to the answer depends. So I think, you know, what we've seen with our really large scale battery storage is basically that there's a lot of options that we can have in the market. And so that has opened up a lot of opportunities for the company. And I think it's kind of opened up the space for us from a development standpoint, and also kind of creating new projects. So I think most of what we're doing right now is future proofing. So there's technology increases at such a rapid pace, even in the storage space. There's just so much that's coming, and so many new implementations and ways that storage is going to be implemented. So I think a lot of what our developers are trying to do now is just make sure that we're ready for it. And even if we're not going to put storage into a particular site, that maybe it's ready for a future implementation, like you mentioned. So I think that that's kind of what we're seeing now, is the current trend in the industry is just basically the possibility almost of storage, and how that fits in to the different markets. So I think, you know, for some of the projects on the wind side, we haven't seen as much integration with storage, but solar seems to be a more common kind of link to have the two based together, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think overall, a lot of our solar projects that are upcoming do have some storage element, and potentially or potentially could have a storage element. So there's, again, that's that future proofing what the market will be when it gets to development, because that development pipeline is so long. The integration of storage kind of comes at the later part of the development piece. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Because I mean, there's so many different types of technologies out there, and there's so many types of disruptions that one needs to like be prepared for, which is like, okay, does it make sense to add it now, or perhaps later when the cost of storage will be less, right? And then we'll go back to you to talk about the asset management, right? The performance of the plant over the guaranteed years. But then maybe, Jillian, like what happens when a customer comes to you and says, hey, well, I want to add storage, but I don't know exactly what to do, or how is it you work with them to find the best product and the best solution? And what is the most common that you find right now?
Yeah, so it's rare nowadays that customers don't have a specific use case or application or project size in mind, especially in the US, where people have, well, largely in California, you've got like, a 20 or 25 year power purchase agreement. So you know exactly, or the customer comes to us, they know exactly what they need. We say, okay, we can give you XYZ, or maybe like if you change this requirement, we can help save you a little bit of money here, or like kind of have this back and forth conversation a little bit. I mean, right now we're really looking at a lot of kind of like long duration, meaning like 4-hour solutions in California and kind of the Southwest, kind of compared to where in the ERCOT markets, it's a lot more of shorter duration, like 1 hour or 1.5 hour or less duration projects. But the sales team does get like all of these requests right, and so by the time it gets to the sales team, it's usually pretty boiled down to a specific set of requirements regarding sizing, use case, application, performance guarantees and things like that. But we do also have a team that still can help do some like market development work in markets that aren't as mature as California or some of these other areas in the globe that are pretty well developed already. And so they can really also help customers understand the business case, like how is your asset going to make money, and work with them at that level.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you mentioned a little bit about like 4 hours and 1 hour. would you say the 4-hour solution is more for like the rolling blackouts or whenever you know you're gonna have a prolonged period of time? The other one's for peak rates, you know, times where the energy production is really high, or how can, like, what's common nowadays? Because most of the things that we hear in the news about plans in California, for example, are like, hey, there's going to be blackout to prevent wildfires.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll definitely, be using a lot in California is like for the capacity market. So we're adding a ton of new storage in California to replace, capacity, like peaking capacity, right? So, we're turning on a battery system instead of a gas plant, which is,
I think we lost you there.
We're looking more at like fast frequency response. So some of the kind of in the top right hand, I don't want to say quadrant's the wrong word, third, I guess, of that little pinwheel, frequency regulation is part of that. And so the asset can do respond like with very fast response times to provide that frequency regulation, for the grid in that area.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess with that subject of frequency regulation, it goes a little bit to what Allegra was talking about earlier, which was like virtual power plants, right? Because that's kind of like how you were able to get together all these different sorts of changes in frequency, changes in demand profiles, and how you're going to virtually create a power plant for it. So I'm a little curious to see, like, Allegra, what it is that you guys are working with, and how it is that you interact with the utilities, interact with like the needs of the market with all the different assets, right? All the different energy sources, whether it's solar and or wind or just the regular grid as well.
Sure, and just to clarify, for frequency regulation, that is one of the ancillary services that we can provide. And so that's reg up or reg down for voltage support on the grid. But as far as, if you could clarify the question, you're just asking how virtual power plants are providing the value, or could you give me a little bit?
A little bit about that, a little bit about all these different sorts of needs that the utility companies have, right? Whether it's like frequency regulation or whether it's like, voltage support, but it's like how you're able to match what these sources have with what the reality is of, like, hey, there's too much demand, for example.
Sure. So the way that our energy storage is participating in wholesale markets, on the modeling side of things, in the pre-sales capacity, we, for behind the meter, have an internal tool called Athena Analyzer that is going to be widely released soon, which allows you to model your energy and demand charge savings. So I think what's really great about STEM is that it's very much a white glove service where we really want to take care of our customers and our developer partners from start to finish and really have our whole partner network. And we have what we call STEM University, which is our training platform. So we want to both educate the channel in addition to providing as hands-on service as we can to ensure that they are getting the best value out of the battery and they know what that value is. And as we're getting to the larger, more sophisticated players that are participating in wholesale markets, we design with our optimization service and use forward pricing curves to simulate if our battery is participating against that for either the future curves or historic values. We can see how the battery would perform in the market and whether or not we are optimizing for day ahead pricing because that's where the greatest value is. And so we're putting more of the capacity towards that, or if other market triggers are providing the best value. And then the advantage, obviously, of STEM technology is our artificial intelligence platform, which is called Athena. And so through Athena, you have that real-time adaptation. And I would just comment, as Kate was talking about, a lot of what we're doing with energy storage is future-proofing. And one of the ways that STEM is doing that is that every decision that we're making is a real-time decision. So if there's a new program that a customer can opt into, or if the pricing signals in a wholesale market are changing, we are able to make those adjustments to your system so that you're always getting the best value and providing the best value for the grid and globally as much as you can to offset carbon.
That's great, because that's exactly the type of question I want to ask Kate, which was, a lot of this is based on modeling, a little bit based on these scenarios of what can happen, what can go wrong. But, if we look at kind of your role, Kate, in which it was like, let's manage the asset, let's make sure it produces what it says it's going to produce. How much of that is true to the scenario in which it was designed maybe 10 years ago, right? And then what sort of risks do you have, and how quickly is it for you to find those solutions to keep up with that and for the lifetime of the plant? Because many people might think that putting solar and deploying the plant, you're set and you're done, but things might change, right? What do you think are those sort of things that change to stay true to that contract?
Yeah, so this is where there's some wiggle room when it comes to like retrofits and boosting power. So essentially there's ways, aftermarket ways, to optimize and change the way that you produce power and make it better than what it was originally modeled or predicted. There's also going to be things that you need to do from a reliability perspective to make sure that your asset continues to perform. And there's going to be challenging and changing grid conditions. Obviously, weather is a factor that we've brought up a couple of times here. So there's always things that you need to be doing to be adapting to changes, not only in the market, but also just real world practical applications of things, cloud coverage and different types of weather events. So it's an interesting job, because I feel like a lot of times we are both kind of paralleling the prediction of what could happen, and then also going back to the word future proofing, we're trying to predict what's coming and make sure that we're ready for it. So that's I guess a little bit more about it.
It's cool because I see that you have like great support from partners such as Fluence and from STEM, and other ones that can do that too, digitally, and that these things can actually like influence this performance of the plant in a way that it can be smooth and it can be, meet a little bit of the demand and the current conditions that are happening. I want to open it up also for Q&A, and I see there's some questions, but before I do that, I want to ask you a series of questions more about, your career pathway, and also how you felt a little bit as a woman in a mostly male industry, and what sort of obstacles you've had to come across. And if you can maybe help us share any sort of experience where you felt really empowered as this source of knowledge in which you're changing the world, and maybe if you can't think of that, then maybe what is the most fun role you've had changing the world and doing these things that are like really hard because nobody else has had to do this before. I'll let whoever wants to start first. I don't want to add pressure to this, and I'll let you guys think about it.
And Juan, one of the questions we had in the chat as well is, how do you help encourage young ladies to pursue degrees in STEM? So on the same line, how are you spreading that influence as a female leader in the field of clean energy?
I'm happy to take that first, especially since you're calling out STEM indirectly, but I'll address John's question and then I can address Juan's. But as far as encouraging young women to pursue the renewable space, I've retained a close connection with one of my favorite professors at Boston College and have been invited back to speak on a panel of alumni from Boston College that have careers in renewable energy. And I think that that's really impactful, just to demonstrate what sort of opportunities are available, what kind of companies you can work at, and really show that there's a wealth of opportunity available. And especially when you have young college kids who are graduating soon and are needing to hit that job market, I think it's great to just expand the network there. I would also say people often hit me up on LinkedIn just looking to learn more, and especially within my alumni network. And I think it's important to always encourage people during those opportunities and take the time to talk to them, even if it's some minutes out of your day. And then as far as addressing Juan's question about how I have felt empowered in the industry, I would say I have really valued that at both Civic Solar and at STEM, that the companies have really valued the voice of all of the individuals there. And I've had an opportunity to speak to C-level staff and have my opinions and what I'm seeing in the market listened to and responded to both by internal stakeholders, and also I've been able to advocate for my company at trade shows such as SPI, and STEM pulled out of SPI this year for obvious reasons we don't need to go into details about, but I'm certainly looking forward to future opportunities at conferences to represent my company, represent our industry, and really learn from other people and continue to push for the change.
Cool. Thank you. And you remind me really briefly to mention a little bit about our mentorship program. At Solar Austin, we do have this program that's kind of a partner of the partnership, but of the pathways. But if you are a solar industry leader that is willing to give out like maybe 30 minutes a week or a couple of weeks, we do have a mentorship program in which we do have either people in the industry that want to learn about other parts of it, or people that are trying to get into it. So if anyone is here and you're a college student and want to seek a little bit of guidance, reach out to Tatiana. I think she just popped the link into the chat that we do have a mentorship program that's voluntary, very flexible, but it's about finding and providing those ways to connect with people doing this change. So that was a little bit of the promotion, the Solar Awesome promo there. But back to Kate and Jillian, in case you guys ever want to share some fun stories or moments in which you felt empowered as a woman leader in this industry.
Sure. Yeah, I can go next. I think, I mean, having worked, I think in manufacturing, that was probably the most challenging in terms of like being a woman and being seen as a leader in that respect. And so the role that I had when I was at Siemens in manufacturing, one of them was in Kansas. And so, you know, everyone at the plant, I think I was like one of 3 women at the plant, and I was responsible for making like pretty serious engineering decisions, which was kind of scary, but also super exciting when, you know, some of the men at the plant would be like, well, this is my suggestion, but you're the decision maker. And so, you know, they really did support me in that regard. But, you know, and I think that honestly, I love what I'm doing now, but that probably was one of my favorite roles, just being able to see, you know, the huge size of some of the equipment that is getting built, like, you know, wind turbines, gas turbines, like all of that is just like, all of that, you know, doing like very on the fly problem solving is really energizing for me. And so that role was really empowering. You know, a specific example, like, since I was kind of engineering support for the plant, people would, you know, we had a time when a third party came in, you know, to look at something. And I went out to see them on the plant floor, and they were like, oh, you know, we're just waiting for engineering. And I said, you know, hey, how are you? And I said, we're waiting for engineering. And I was like, I am engineering, like, hi. And so they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And, you know, that was even just a few years ago. I think people still, it's just like they're, you know, a woman is not traditionally seen as an engineering leader, but kind of addressing the question in the chat about encouraging younger women and girls to get in the field. I am an active mentor of the Industrial Assessment Center. So what I had mentioned before, the DOE program, there's a specific like women in energy efficiency like spin-off, I guess, from that. So I've helped a few people who are still, you know, in school through that. But something that's like really important for me also is not just recruiting women into the field, but making sure we can make the workplace like feel like it's somewhere they want to stay. Like, so not only recruitment, but also really focusing on retaining, because we can get people there, but we've got to make people, women specifically, you know, women stay in the field and stay motivated and feel supported and things like that. So I do feel very passionate about that as well.
It's amazing. And the best response you can give, you know, to someone that's kind of like waiting for engineering is like, no, you're looking at it right now, you know.
I was like, sorry to disappoint.
So watch out, we're gonna build something new here. And Kate, no pressure, but if you want to share kind of like an anecdote or any sort of empowerment story, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I have a pretty similar experience in terms of just not being recognized. So one of my first visits to one of my wind farms, I went in and had the BOP tech that worked there, who I worked with every day, but only on the phone, walked directly past me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And ended up talking to him back in the lunchroom, and he was like, oh yeah, I thought you were a landowner. And I was like, okay, well, cool. So I think that happens a lot, from a operational space. It's not necessarily traditional for women to be in that space. So there's always a challenge. Even if it's just a lack of recognition that you could be the person that they're looking for. And I think that is something that you have to overcome and just keep basically saying, I belong here, and keep showing up every day. So one of the challenges I would say is actually hate public speaking. So I overcame that fear pretty early on as soon as I stepped into management and really just forced myself to continue doing it. And it's essentially how I solve every problem, is just do it 1,000 times in a row until I feel much better about it. So I would say for anyone that's, trying to get into STEM or trying to retain themselves into STEM, as you guys heard at the beginning, my background is pretty non-traditional. I can read you a sonnet, but I didn't have any background in math. I told myself from a pretty young age that I wasn't good at physics, I wasn't good at math. And so I would just say, basically, keep trying, keep doing it. I taught myself Excel at like 27, so you can do it too. I'm nothing special about me, so you guys can make it work. It's just about keep getting back up and getting yourself out there, and really just keep trying. And I would say, similar to what some of the other panelists mentioned, is basically on our side, just making sure that you have a good time and that you're enjoying work is really important, because again, you have a community and you have people that you can touch base with and talk to. And so one of the things that I've done at the Orsted group is start an employee resource group and really trying to build community through volunteerism, through giving back, and through different niche things like board gaming and various things that people can really bond over. Because I think one of the things we've lost a little bit, and I love that we're doing this happy hour now, is the ability to really kind of connect with our peers in a way, especially if we've been working digitally for a long time. And so making sure that you have those connections and that you're getting to know people on a personal level, that's been something that's really important for our company.
No, and it's a pretty amazing story from both of you, that you're able to retain and stay at these companies, and that's the important thing, because you're creating this culture and this sort of environment. I think from a personal perspective, as some of you know, I grew up in Colombia, and in Colombia, and even in English too, you call the planet Earth as like Mother Earth, right? And there is a lot to say about how we treat our planet, and we have been treated our planet in the past, and how it is the Mother Earth, and how we continue to treat women that are changing the world, for better as you three. And there's a lot of connections here, and it's important to give you guys the spotlight, give you guys a speaker, and I'm glad that you guys are able to find these companies and these opportunities, whether it's SPI, whether it's these trade shows, and then just this stage for other women to get involved. And it's difficult trying things that haven't been done in the past, but I commend all you three and everybody else for tuning in and listening to the world of storage, which is here to stay. Want to give the last few minutes a little bit to an open floor type of Q&A. I know that there are some questions in the chat, but I want to just make sure that any other remarks or questions that came about are answered. I will cut it off though at 7 p.m. though. Feel free to unmute yourself though.
Hi there, this is Carrie Van Amberg with Recurrent Energy. Great job. Really enjoyed this panel a lot. It was great to hear from you. Kate Goldsberry in particular, great to see you. We used to work together at EDPR. Nice to see you. So my question is for STEM Influence. I am curious, as storage-only companies, on how you're thinking about market design, conversations that are taking place right now at the Texas PUC. If you just want to visit a little bit about your thoughts on it, or approaches, or any solutions you've been batting around.
I'm happy to speak generally as to some of the value streams that we're seeing in Texas, but as Kate had mentioned, definitely can't speak to anything specific that STEM is targeting currently. But as far as the ERCOT market as a whole, there are coincident peaks that can be offset as the main value drivers. So in that sense, it's similar to the global adjustment market that we see in Canada, where those events are some of the main revenue streams that storage can tap into. And I think that obviously, as you had mentioned, a lot of it also comes back to the policy side of things and making sure that there is storage friendly policy that is encouraging using it as a resource and having it as that on-demand power. So I know it's a little high level, but hopefully that helps address a little bit.
It's pretty cool. I would never think to pair up Canada and Texas together and their energy profile. So that's something cool that I learned.
Yeah, and I guess I can add just a little bit to that. I mean, Allegra did a good job there, but yeah, I mean, we're, you know, the Texas market is and maybe, you know, maybe the next California, right? Like there's a lot of opportunities there. And so we're, you know, we're trying to, or we have people at Fluence who are directly involved in the policy side and are super knowledgeable about that, you know, definitely more knowledgeable than I am in that space. So we are, you know, tracking all of that, understanding the technology requirements and the implications of any policy changes that come our way.
Great, thanks y'all. It's definitely an exciting time for the state. Excited to see where storage goes from here.
Yeah, and one other thing that I wanted to share with you guys is that we do have a survey. If this is kind of like your first time or your 5th time or your 10th time about our happy hours, me and myself and the rest of the team are interested in knowing what you think about these happy hours. I know that traditionally they've been in person, but if it was that way, then it would be kind of difficult to have Jillian flying from California to be part of a happy hour. So feel free to scan this. Let us know what it is you want to hear about next time, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can continue to bring value to you guys, because this is for you and this is also for to help us piece together the exciting world of solar and storage. Any other questions that can avoid getting Kate in trouble? You know, with Orsted over there speaking about project development, speaking about like any sort of secrets out there. Anything else?
I have a question for Kate. How green is your hydrogen?
Very green.
Leprechaun green, maybe?
Oh,
Irish.
lime green for sure. 1000
Lime green.
electrical.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to check.
Yeah. As green as it can
I
be.
worked. One thing I've done is I worked on computer games, so I've got that sort of spin on things. The humorous,
Yeah,
the lighthearted.
positive attitude and sense of humor is what gets me through the day. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
And for someone that feared public speaking earlier, Kate, you did an excellent job. So I want to thank you for taking the role of the developer and the asset owner and helping us understand how we deal with the solutions that STEM and Fluence have to offer. Really a sincere gratitude and of your time and of your knowledge, and keep on doing what you're doing, because it's not easy to get up every morning and try to solve challenges that haven't been solved before. So hope you guys have a great night and stay tuned for our October happy hour. And cheers. You know, it's the end of September, so the start of fall. Have a great rest of the evening and good to tune in with everyone.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.